Taliban was gaining provinces after provinces, and the fact that it was very clear that they are going to come back. There were so many incidents that were still haunting me. They were ready to hand over their children to me. I met a painter who said that I will die, I know, but my paintings will remain. Why is the world so worried if the Taliban is going to come back? The Americans did nothing for us all these 20 years.
Today I am joined by award-winning journalist and author Nayanima Basu, whose book, The Fall of Kabul, Dispatches from Chaos, captures the fear, urgency and human stakes surrounding one of the most dramatic geopolitical collapses in recent memory. Nayanima Basu has extensive experience writing on international relations, strategic affairs, geopolitics and geoeconomics, and this book has been extremely well received across the board. Welcome back to Books and Banter, a Dialogus Digital original series. Nayanima, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Portia. It's an honor to be with you on this show.
Pleasure. Before I go ahead with questions, it's very intriguing as an international relations scholar myself, that what was that moment when you realized that you were not just writing a story, but this has to be a book?
Well, that's actually a very good question, and many people have asked me, but I don't know whether I've been able to give the answer I really wanted to give. Is the fact that when I covered Afghanistan, I was covering just purely as a reporter.
Right.
That time there was no plan to write a book or anything like that. The plan was to get the story going, get as many stories as possible. That's what we reporters do when we are on the ground, and especially when you are in a war zone like Afghanistan. And that time, as you are well aware, the tensions were at its peak, and so many reports were coming out in international media. All sorts of stories were being told. But the only story that was not being told is the fact that how Taliban was gaining provinces after provinces, and the fact that it was very clear that they are going to come back. But then coming to your question, I thought that when I came back, did my reportage and gave all the stories, everything was done. There were so many incidents that were still haunting me. Especially the faces of those women who were crying while I was entering the airport. They were ready to hand over their children to me because I was coming back. Then there were this once I met a painter who said that I will die, I know, but my paintings will remain. So there are these short, small incidents that haunt you, and many things that you are not able to write as a reporter. So I thought stories that were untold needs to be told through a little book. So that's how it is.
Wonderful. So, did it begin as a documentation or did it feel very personal from the beginning?
So, it really felt very personal from the beginning. My first, I would not like to use the word because it was kind of, what happened with Afghanistan is kind of tragic, but I was pretty excited to do this assignment. As a journalist, you can imagine, for me to go to Afghanistan, I've been to Pakistan several times and done, reportage on terrorism, this, that. But
in fact, sorry, I'll just cut you. I would see your social media posts on how you've reached Afghanistan, and I was very excited myself that you are there. It almost felt like, okay, that's like one of us, and she's getting this first-hand view, so she'll have amazing stories to say.
So kind of you to say that. So, it was my first time to Afghanistan. Of course, I've been writing on Afghanistan for several years, but to actually land in Kabul, and as an Indian reporter who would give the Indian perspective, the South Asian perspective, and not really the perspectives that we were reading in the international media, I have total respect for them. I was following Washington Post at that time, New York Times, but then somewhere I thought, this story need to be told also through the eyes and ears and everything through the hands of an Indian reporter. So that was the thrill.
So as an author, when you started this journey of writing the book, when you think back, what stands out most now? Was it the adrenaline, the responsibility, the emotional toll, or the clarity that comes after the distance?
Well, I think again That's an excellent question. I think all of this put together is what, kind of drove me. Uh, of course, initially, as I said, the excitement was to do the assignment and do with utmost honesty, because there were many stories that I reported which were not so-called liked by people out here, but that was the truth. For example, when I was in Mazar-e-Sharif and I was inside that blue mosque and I was speaking with so many women out there, men, women, they were all sitting, and one of them told me that why is the world so worried if the Taliban is going to come back? The Americans did nothing for us all these 20 years, and Taliban is still one of us. So let them also give a chance. We will have to give them a chance. So that was quite a shock to me, because we always had this one-sided, one view that, oh, Taliban cannot come, it is only the Americans who can develop that country, although we know that they did nothing and the chaotic withdrawal is for everyone to see, and you left that country in a complete chaos and a mess. But then again, there are human stories that needed to be told. I deliberately, and since I was the fact that as a woman reporter, it helps you a lot. People think it's a disadvantage. It is not. Rather, for me, it was a huge advantage, because I could enter the beauty parlors and many other places where men cannot enter. And there are so many stories that were, hiding there, and nobody knew what was going on. There was this beautician whom I really liked a lot, and I used to go to her for, for my hair and all that. And she would tell me that I really literally thought that Afghanistan will be like this, America, and we will have that kind of a lifestyle. If, of course, not in America, but a developed country like that. But today they are leaving us. What will happen to me? What will happen to me? And that was her own parlor she was running with just 3 girls. So I don't know. I mean, I was in touch with her after I came back for 6-7 months, but then I heard that all the beauty parlors have been shut down or burned down, and I'm sure she is now jobless. I don't know how she's managing her family, but these stories needed to be told. So there was an emotional toll, of course. It still is, and I, for all these years, I've been constantly trying to go back again and maybe meet some of them whom I met at that point of time. Some I know. Very sadly, they are not alive. Some of the soldiers that I met in Mazar-e-Sharif, all young boys of 25, 26, they were looking forward to go back home. I don't know what happened, but I know for a fact that the front line where I was in, almost 20 of them got killed. And that happened the very next day I came back to Kabul from Mazar. So these are stories that don't leave you, and they something changes also in your life, after you cover a war so closely. It may not be a typical quintessential war that you call for, but then of course there are these human interest stories. The deeper that you go into it, more you get involved. And of course, when you are sitting alone, you're writing, and you're again thinking of Afghanistan. I just think about Afghanistan almost every day somehow. It never leaves me, but these stories stay with you. And I don't know, I tried to put all that, pour my heart out in the book, but I still think there are so many things that I needed to say, which I probably will say in another book.
So reacting to that, I was going through some of your reviews, and I think one is more recent at the Jindal University. There is this mention of how you as a woman could bring out the untold story of other women. So how did you feel about that, and did you at any point of time think that your nationality had any kind of barrier to that, or you connected to them as a human being to human being?
No, so you must be very well aware, Portia, when women connect with each other, there is no barrier that you have, nationality.
Absolutely.
Anything, women just connect with another woman, with everything that they see, the way they view the world and life and everything else. So I think it was very easy for me to connect with the women there. But then again, in Afghanistan, the story is that they have been seeing war for ages and centuries, right? So they know how to live with it, which I thought was the biggest lesson for me to learn, that they are not whining about it, they are not complaining, they are not crying, they are not begging for help. They are that spirit that we will fight it out.
And they've made their weakness their strengths.
Yes, completely. I mean, when we talk about resilience, I think Afghans are the ones who define what is resilience, and especially Afghan women. and also the children there. I mean, I've seen children of hardly 6, 7 year olds selling boiled eggs and water bottle on, you know, traffic lights. They're so poor, but they have that pride in them. They don't beg. They don't beg. So there was once I wanted to help one of those boys who was there at that, you know, there was a crossing near my hotel. But he refused to take the money, and he was very smart, sharp boy, 7 year old. I spoke to him, and then he said, "You have to take 2 boiled eggs from me, then only I'll take the money." So you know,
I think
that's how they
something
live.
even our youngsters can learn from, you know.
Absolutely,
It's very sad they don't sometimes have access to education. Sometimes even if they have access, they just feel that begging is an easier option. You know,
Exactly.
it makes so much of a difference when you make an effort and earn the money rather than beg.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, struggle hardens you.
Yeah.
But then I think in Afghanistan, you learn that lesson in a very different way.
So one thing that I'm really curious about, you know, if you could share with us the methodology you've used to write this book, you know, a situation moving as fast as Kabul, how did you actually report responsibly, given that things are not just changing day wise, but in a matter of in every hour?
Well, so when I wrote the book, I made a conscious effort not to make it look like a copy of my reports, you know, which I had done at that time, the organization that I was working for. And that time, when I was on the field, the stories were, as you said, evolving very fast, and I had to report all of that, especially with the fact that Afghanistan, in Afghanistan, Taliban was taking over provinces after provinces at a blistering speed, right? And people were really at a loss as to what was happening, how they are getting so much of strength. And one story that I did that really stood out and created a lot of, controversy and whatever, is the fact that the Afghan defense ministry at that point of time, they really wanted, the Afghan government, which was then under President Ashraf Ghani, wanted air support from India in order to fight the Taliban, because the Americans were already on their way out and they had taken away all the air support and everything else. So that was one story that I did. But coming to the book I wanted to speak about my own experience as covering war as a journalist, and the fact that how war can be also reported from a very different perspective, which also is a responsibility that I think all reporters, journalists, authors have, is the fact that you cannot keep on talking about one aspect. This is also a country, this is also a population, a dignified population, and the fact that if anybody is aware about the history, and I'm a history student, so if anybody has followed the Anglo-Afghan wars, you know, the great game, so to say, would be also keen to tell you how this country has sort of evolved. The communist government that was there, the coming in of the Soviet regime and all of that. So, and for me, of course, it was also writing a book that will not be lecturing anybody. It will not be too academic, because you have millions of books on that and far better than what I would probably write. But I really wanted this book to be a simple narration of what was happening at that point of time, the 10-12 days that I was there, what I witnessed, and the fact that there are also humans, men, women, children, who are just their part of it, you know. None of them wanted, they don't have a choice whether they want Ashraf Ghani or an America, whatever. They just want to have a normal life like you and me, right? So those stories needed to be told, and I said, I don't know, I wanted to say that through my perspective. Some people may agree, some may not, but then again, I stuck to facts and I wanted to tell the truth. If it is an uncomfortable truth, then I really cannot help it, but that was the truth. And I thought there is no other book like that which tells you the daily stories, you know, what was happening daily on the roads. Like for let me give you one example. Let's say the day I had interviewed Gulbuddin Hikmatyar, right? He's known in the Western press and the Western world as the butcher of Kabul for various reasons. I'll not go into that, but when I met him, and I was very scared. I was, you know, I covered my head. If you see that,
you were in a full hijab.
Yeah, kind of. That was my own dupatta.
Yeah.
But then I didn't want to disturb the sentiments there or anything. I was criticized heavily for covering my head, but then it was their country I'm sitting in,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And I was sitting. So I don't, my story and my aim always is to get my story. That's my objective. And I don't care what I need to do for that, as long as it is not really harming anyone. So I was all covered and everything, and I thought he will be this ruthless guy. He'll come and probably, I don't know how he will talk. But then he was, an utmost gentleman who sat and made me so comfortable, and he said, go through your questions, ask me whatever you want to ask, and don't get scared. You can ask me anything that you want. So, and
that is encouraging.
That was very encouraging, and he made his grandson sit there and translate whatever he was saying.
What was he speaking in? Which language?
He was speaking in Pashto, of course, but he understands English. He speaks very good English. He was so impressive. I mean, I know this will also be controversial probably, but then when as a journalist you're facing somebody as a character as Gulbuddin Hikmatyar who's answering all your questions, I think that was quite a takeaway for me.
I think it was, you made the most of the opportunity.
I guess so, but then that was the day Taliban came inside Kabul, and by the time the interview got over and I was going out of his office, he was also kind of whisked away. And if you've read in my book, the interview sort of was left incomplete because by then the news came in that the Taliban has entered Kabul. And so I was I got a cab at that point of time, and my cab driver, he was leaving me. He said, no, I don't care what happens to you. I have to go back to my home. I said, okay, at least drop me, in the hotel, because I was quite far from Serena Hotel where I was staying. So, and that was the day I saw how Afghans, like Delhi Afghans, they can come on the road and they were ready to fight the Taliban. They said, where is the Taliban? Somebody came, somebody was on the road with his 2 wives and 6 children, and he said, I'm ready to fight them. So, and he had, I think, 4 boys. All of them had a, gun on their shoulder, a casual AK-47. And they said, so I was like, I mean, that's another incident how I met them, because my car broke down midway and I had to walk till Serena. And so I was fascinated. I was not thinking, yes, for a second I thought, what if the Taliban comes on the road and sees me, what will they do with me? But then to see their courage, and it was quite a learning for me. The boys were also holding the guns. They said, we are ready to fight the Taliban, let them come, we'll shoot them. So it was quite a thing. So these stories nobody talks about, right? As if this is all given, as if everybody knows these things happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. I mean, at least for me, it was quite a thing. And so I wrote that. I wrote that in my report also. But I think this is what Afghan character is defined, and that was quite a thing.
Your, I mean, of course, your perception of survival completely evolved with such experiences. Given the environment you were in, what was it that you relied on the most as an writer? Was it memory, instinct, was it notes? Because I'm sure you had limited access to internet, maybe not at all in some phases. And then also, what became more harder for you? Was it verifying the facts, or was it processing what you're seeing?
No, so I think the hardest part was processing what I was seeing,
right?
Because everything was new to me. Nothing that I had assumed I will see, I did not see anything of that. And my perception really, before I left, I thought I will be seeing some of those visuals that I grew up seeing. My father used to have Life magazines, where I remember how when the Soviet withdrawal happened, the Soviet tanks were rolling down on Kabul's roads, people were waving, children were waving at the Russian soldiers. I thought I'll see something like that, Americans will, soldiers will walk down and people will march and people will wave at them. Nothing of that sort actually happened, and nothing. When I reached there, I realized everything that I had planned is going to be unplanned, and I have to, start from scratch all my planning. So, but then again, frankly, the point is, when you unlearn and then you learn, you realize what was happening. But then coming to internet, they had fabulous internet connectivity everywhere. See, again,
Wow.
you had Americans sitting there for 20 years. So I got
Modern war.
modern war, and also I have written it very clearly and very extensively in my book. Is how you get the helping drives there. You know, the drivers that you get, they are fabulous. I'll tell you, because all you need to do is that you need to agree to give them $100 per day. If you can, that's the minimum. They will be your bodyguard. Of course, they'll drive the car. They will get an AK-47 to protect you, because you can be attacked any moment. There can be car bombs, magnet bombs, and all that. They will give you also Wi-Fi connectivity. So they carry those little
dongles,
dongles and all that. So I had no problems with connectivity, honestly.
So with driver you get full security.
Exactly. They even manage to get you the flak jackets and all of that, because they know how to manage the media. You know, they've been coming and going, so they know how to get things done. But then again, they are also, you know, they know end of the day they have to live inside this war ecosystem. We will come and go. So they know how to turn it into, people can say, oh, you know, they're selling war, but then they are also very poor. This is their way of survival. You don't have proper jobs or, you know, industry, anything there. So, so internet was never a problem. I got that even in Mazar-e-Sharif, even in front line. So I would take my photos and, you know, tweet them sometimes. And so that was a help. But then, yes, notes I always take as a reporter, we have to. But then there are many things that stay in your memory that comes out when you are actually writing and you're deep in your thoughts. That's when you realize there are so many little things that you probably ignored at that point of time, which really you can write now. For example, when I was sitting to catch the flight back to Kabul in Mazar-e-Sharif, I was sitting with this group of girls, and they were talking everything under the sun young girls can talk about. And so one of them looked at me and asked that if I'm an Indian. I said yes. So then I told them why I was there, and then first thing they told me, have you seen Shah Rukh Khan? And Shah Rukh Khan is very much there in this book, by the way, even if I'm not a fan, but he is there because he's very popular there.
Very popular.
And also Deepika Padukone. So just to make them happy, I said, yes, I've seen Shah Rukh Khan. So they said, have you gone to his house, you know, that's called Mannat? I'm like, yes, I've been there as well. And they were so thrilled, they were so happy. So that was one moment that I thought, even if I was not telling them the truth, they were at least smiling, giggling. They wanted to come to India, they wanted to study in Amity University, Sharda University, and they really think these are big Ivy League universities. To them, it's a dream to come and settle here like that, you know. But I still don't know what happened to them. So that was one thing. I was just casually chatting, and then we realized that the flight was late by almost 7 hours. And the talk there was that Taliban has come into Mazar-e-Sharif and they're going to shut down the airport. So probably I will not be able to come back to Kabul. But eventually I could, and then the next day Mazar fell to Taliban. No, not next day, maybe 2 days after that, yes. And so that I kind of forgot, you know, in the scheme of things. And I was also had to come back myself. My editor wanted me to come back. And then when one day I was writing this book, almost after, it was on my second year of writing this book, and I really sat on this book. I could have written it much earlier, but you know, as a journalist, you don't get the time. That incident suddenly came into my mind. Those girls, you know, that laughter, those giggling, and how they were so excited to think that I'm somebody who has seen Shah Rukh Khan, and the fact that how they really look up to India as this big destination where they can go and achieve their dreams, you know. It's sad that we did not live up to their expectations, because you know what we did. India revoked all the visas of students and everything else. We still have not resumed normal visa issuance and all of that. But then that was something it came later on while I was writing. I completely forgot about those girls, and now now their faces are also in front of me. I don't know where they are, what they are doing, but that is how processing had happened.
It's fascinating how you say that you had absolute access to internet and Wi-Fi and everything, because I'm sure even now, given it's 2026, a lot of states would believe that in a conflict situation, the first step you do is you cut off ties with the rest of the world. Here, everybody had access to the world, and still nobody could stop from Kabul falling. So, in different ways wars dealt with, and states handled the situation. uh, what was your process of verification when it comes to, like, if you came across conflicting accounts, how did you handle that situation? Because I'm sure in moments of panic and collapse, people experience the same event very differently. So if you had conflicting situations, how did you go about it in your book?
So, there was no conflicting situation as such, but what I wanted in my epilogue, what I wrote, probably did not go down well with the government at that point of time, but I am happy to see that they are doing exactly what I had written, which is that you have to engage the Taliban. You can call them good Taliban, bad Taliban, define, explain, whatever you
Whatever,
do.
yeah.
The reality is that they are back. The reality is that the Americans are gone. The reality is that there was a chaotic withdrawal. The reality also is that the Americans could not achieve anything like they are not achieving even in the current Iran war. But then you have ransacked that country completely. And today there is this Taliban which is willing to have engagement with the world. And it's good that India is engaging with the Taliban, and the fact that probably not to the extent that needs to be done for the Afghans, and also some of the mistakes that we committed. I hope that Afghans still love Indians the way I had seen, although I have strong doubts, because what we did in the aftermath of Kabul falling was severely unfortunate. But then again, that was the only conflicting interest that I have writing the epilogue, that whether you like it or not, you have to engage the Taliban.
Yeah.
Because this is one country that is in your immediate neighborhood, and you're not having good ties with Pakistan, you have to have good ties with Afghanistan. Then of course, you have Iran and all that. And then we saw this high level visits happening. But now of course the situation is very different, with them having an unprecedented war with Pakistan, which is why they have also gone back on whatever plans were there. But that was the only thing. While writing the epilogue, people who reviewed my manuscript told me that, are you sure that when you are saying that India has to engage the Taliban, because we did not do that in their first tenure when the Taliban was there. But I said, well, this is a very different world and a very different reality. So that was the only thing at that point of time. Rest was all about my experience.
Thank you, Nayanima, for sharing this experience. Before we close, I'll have a quick rapid fire round with you. If you can give me quick answers of whatever comes to your mind. One word that describes Kabul.
Resilience.
Coffee or courage, what kept you going?
Oh, well, coffee.
The first emotion when you felt the Taliban entered Kabul.
I've got a story.
The toughest interview you've ever done.
It was easiest but toughest because I was nervous, which of course was with Gulbuddin Hikmatyar.
One moment in the book that still gives you goosebumps.
It is that incident where there was this woman who wanted to give her child to me while we were entering the technical area of the airport at that night when I was getting evacuated with the Indian embassy. And there was this lady who was constantly knocking on the door, the windows, and I was in embassy car. She was just telling me that I don't want anything, take my child and take her or him with you, and I could not do anything. That night, that particular moment haunts me. I can still kind of see that child and that mother, and I don't know, because after that the Abhigate incident happened, that blast happened. So
you'll never know what happened.
I'll never know. So more than goosebumps, I think that really keeps me awake all the time. It just makes me feel so helpless.
If you could ask one question to the Taliban leadership today, what would it be?
Why are they not allowing women education? Why are they so scared of women?
One page in your notebook you can never forget.
It was that chapter that I wrote, that will I be alive today or will I die, something like that. I wrote because the hotel that I was staying, not really a hotel, it was a roadside motel, where the manager told me in Mazar-e-Sharif that he told me that he has news that the Taliban is going to come tonight, and he told me this could be your last night, so maybe you'll not see morning tomorrow, so you have to go. There was some kind of a bunker there or something. I said, so he said, we will not be helping you if the Taliban comes in, just manage yourself. So I think that was, I'm laughing now, but that was
quite honest, I would say.
He was honest, and he said
there's
that
no color coding.
You've come on your, at your own risk. So, and we know for a fact that the Taliban will come tonight, and they might attack this hotel. So we have told you where the bunker is. Rest is your call.
According to you, which world leader misunderstood Afghanistan the most?
I think, well, I would not single out any world leader. I think everyone misunderstood. But I think, and this again will not be going down well, is the fact that Donald Trump really did something which I don't know what he's planning to do now, is to sign the peace deal with the Taliban. And he even wanted to invite them to his own, residence. But the peace deal, when you signed with the Taliban, what was it? What was the logic? And do you really think that after this 20 years of bloodshed, was that a logical step? And the fact that when Joe Biden came in, the way he messed it all up, I think that is something the world should learn. And I think I put the blame squarely on President Joe Biden. He was in such a rush to complete that war and probably start somewhere else, something else, which Americans love to do. But then I think he messed up that time the State Secretary Antony Blinken, they completely messed up the Afghan plan, the peace deal, and that is what Afghanistan is facing today.
Very unfortunate. Last question, did the journalist in you ever overpower the human being in you?
I think it depends. While I was writing the book, it was the human being in me which was writing the book. And when I was, but then again, I think as journalist, you are always thinking as a journalist. I didn't want to be over emotional, which I think I could have been had I been in my own genuine self, but I wanted to also tell the world the story from a reporter's eye. So I think maybe the journalist took over.
Nice. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. That was Nayanima Basu, The Fall of Kabul.